When Fast and Loud premiered in 2012, it was an instant hit. The premise was pure gold. Take a charismatic, fast-talking Texan, Richard Rawlings, and his crew of skilled mechanics at Gas Monkey Garage, and follow them as they scoured the country for forgotten automotive treasures. The goal was always the same: find a diamond in the rough, restore it to its former glory, and flip it for a massive profit at auction. The tension was built into every episode. Would they make the deadline? Would the car sell for a profit? The show was more than just a car show. It was a drama about risk, reward, and the personalities that made it all happen. At the heart of it all was Richard Rawlings, a man who looked and acted the part of a rock star mechanic. He was the visionary, the boss, the man with the plan and the charisma to sell it to millions. He built an empire on the back of his image, cultivating a persona of a shrewd businessman who was also one of the guys. The narrative was carefully constructed. A self-made man who had worked as a police officer, firefighter, and paramedic before selling his printing company to fund his dream of opening a garage. It was the quintessential American success story. He had convinced the Discovery Channel to take a chance on him, and in doing so, created a global brand. For years, the show dominated the automotive genre. It spawned over 300 episodes and created a massive fan base that was deeply invested in the lives of the crew. It wasn't just about the cars. It was about the family dynamic at the garage. The team, which included talented fabricators like Aaron Kaufman and the ever-present office manager Christy Brimberry, became household names. Viewers felt like they were part of the Gas Monkey crew, sharing in the triumphs and the defeats. The brand grew to include merchandise, a restaurant and music venue, and even an energy drink. It seemed like Richard Rawlings could do no wrong, the maestro of his own multimedia empire. But behind the scenes, the first cracks were beginning to show. If you were a dedicated fan, the first major red flag appeared when Aaron Kaufman, the show's beloved and supremely talented mechanic, walked away. Aaron wasn't just an employee, he was the Ian to Rawlings' Yang. While Richard was the loud, deal-making frontman, Aaron was the quiet genius fabricator who actually made the impossible builds happen. His departure at the end of season 13 was a shock to the system. It was explained as a mutual and amicable split, with Aaron wanting to pursue his own projects. But to those paying close attention, it seemed like a very public fracture in the family that the show had worked so hard to portray. The exit of Aaron and later his friend and fabricator KC was a moment that many fans point to as the beginning of the end. Online forums and reviews started to paint a very different picture of life at Gas Monkey Garage. One viewer, in a scathing review, noted that the show's magic was gone after Aaron left, claiming that the Gas Monkey model was not sustainable and that Rawlings' true colors were beginning to show. The reviewer described Rawlings as a terrible leader and a boss whose self-serving nature far outweighs his noble desire for achieving something great as a team. The narrative of a happy, cohesive team was starting to unravel. Rumors began to circulate that the working environment was toxic, that Rawlings was a difficult boss who took all the credit and gave little in return. The departures of key talent didn't just hurt the show's dynamic. They suggested a deeper problem with the leadership at the top. It was the first time the public narrative, the perfect image of a thriving garage family, was openly questioned. Why would two of the most important people in the empire walk away from such a lucrative and famous platform? The happy family narrative was starting to look like a carefully crafted facade. As more cast members left, the whispers grew louder. The official story of moving on to new ventures no longer held water. Insiders and anonymous sources began to fill in the blanks, painting a portrait of a boss whose ambition and ego were alienating the very people who built his success. The central claim was that Richard Rawlings had become a con man, prioritizing his own brand and revenue streams over the team's well-being. The very people who had been portrayed on screen as a tight-knit family were now being described as underpaid and overworked. The departure of Aaron Kaufman was particularly telling. He wasn't just any mechanic, he was a fan favorite and a key ingredient to the show's success. His decision to walk away from a multi-million-dollar franchise was a massive blow. Whispers from within the automotive community suggested that he had simply had enough of Rawlings' management style and the unsustainable pace of the work. The creativity and passion that had defined the early seasons were being crushed by the pressures of television and the need to constantly churn out content. This period of turmoil coincided with a massive public lawsuit that tarnished Rawlings' carefully crafted image. In 2018, a legal battle erupted over the Gas Monkey Bar and Grill, a restaurant and live music venue that licenses brand. The lawsuit, which involved claims of defamation and contract disputes worth millions, was a messy, public affair that went far beyond the world of car restoration. Rawlings, who had built an empire on his reputation as a savvy businessman, was now being sued by his own business partners. It was a stark contradiction to the perfect image he presented on television, and it suggested his empire was built on shaky ground. The contradictions between the on-screen fantasy and the off-screen reality became impossible to ignore. The evidence was mounting that all was not well in the Gas Monkey Kingdom. The lawsuit over the bar and music venue went far beyond a simple disagreement. It was a bitter $6 million legal war that forced the venue to rebrand and cut all ties with Rawlings, becoming Amplified Live. It was a massive public failure for a man whose brand was built on his business acumen. But the most damning evidence came from the man himself. In December 2020, Richard Rawlings appeared on the Joe Rogan Experience, a podcast with a massive audience. For years, fans had been left in the dark about the show's future. Rawlings finally broke his silence, dropping a bombshell that confirmed the worst fears of the fan base. He told Rogan, "I have exited Discovery, and I am a free agent," and that the show was no more. He said he felt he had reached the top of the mountain with Discovery, but he also revealed some of the frustrations that had been building for years. Rawlings explained that his Discovery contract was holding him back. He wasn't allowed to start a podcast or even use his massive social media following, which he had built himself, to promote his own Gas Monkey brand without the network's permission. His social media accounts with millions of followers were considered the network's property. He even revealed a $25,000 penalty clause for speaking negatively about the network. The interview was a clear sign that his relationship with Discovery had soured. He wasn't just leaving a show. He was escaping a contract he felt had trapped him. If the show's cancellation and the subsequent legal battles were the wounds, the Ferrari F6 project was the event that threatened to completely destroy any remaining goodwill toward Richard Rawlings. In 2025, a dispute erupted between Rawlings and French custom car builder Alex Danton. The project was a collaboration to build a wild, six-wheeled Ferrari Testarossa. The initial idea was a perfect fit for Gas Monkey, a car so insane and unique it would break the internet. The partnership had started well, following the success of a six-wheeled Humvee they had collaborated on. However, it quickly turned into a public, online firestorm. The turning point came when Rawlings posted a picture of himself with the unfinished Ferrari on Instagram. It was a standard move, a way to generate hype. But the response from Alex Danton was anything but standard. Danton exploded in the comments, publicly accusing Rawlings of being a fraud. He didn't just say he was unhappy. He went on a brutal, all-caps offensive. He wrote, "It's so easy to steal and take credit for other people's work. Yes, liar and thief, I did it. They didn't touch a nut." The comment was a stunning and unprecedented attack. Danton further accused Rawlings of paying him only 10% of what he was owed and using his fame and money to try and silence him. A project that was meant to be a celebration of craftsmanship had become a symbol of bitter betrayal, laid bare for millions to see. The F6 Ferrari dispute is the key to understanding what really happened to Richard Rawlings. To him, the project was just business, acquiring a build from a builder, adding the Gas Monkey stamp, and maximizing its value. He claimed that when the car arrived, he found the paint was peeling and panels were so misaligned you could fit your hand through them, forcing his team to go back over just about every area. He likely saw himself as a savvy businessman salvaging a flawed investment. But to a builder like Alex Danton, the car was art, a piece of his soul poured into metal. From his perspective, Rawlings swooped in and was trying to claim credit for something he had no hand in creating. Danton felt he had been disrespected and cheated, claiming Rawlings owed him far more than he had paid. He saw Rawlings as a man who uses his clout to steamroll people. This wasn't just a business deal gone wrong. It was an artist watching a corporation take ownership of his work. This public feud crystallized everything people had been whispering about for years. The man who built an empire on the idea of a family of mechanics was now being publicly called a thief by an artist he hired. The lawsuit over the bar showed he could clash with businessmen, but this was different. This was a direct attack on his credibility as a builder and his very soul as a car guy. It proved that the perfect image was a myth and that the empire was built on a foundation of business moves that were often perceived by others as exploitative. The one who was supposed to be the ultimate car enthusiast was being exposed as a ruthless operator willing to sacrifice relationships for profit. The shocking revelation is this: Richard Rawlings never truly left the limelight. The limelight simply changed shape, and in doing so, it exposed the man behind the brand. The reason he left Discovery was, on the surface, a desire for creative and financial freedom. He was a big fish in a big pond who felt the network was stifling his ability to build his own empire. He wanted to own his content, his social media, and his brand without answering to a corporate overlord, as demonstrated by his $25,000 non-disparagement clause and the restrictions on his social media. But in breaking away to build his own media empire, he also revealed the truth of his business model. Without the shield of a network's production team, his interactions become raw and unfiltered. The Alex Danton dispute is the perfect example. It shows the entire world that his success is not just about a team of misfits building cars. It's about a singular, powerful businessman who is often willing to take credit for the work of others. It reveals a pattern of alienating the very talent that made him famous, from Aaron Kaufman to Alex Danton. Ultimately, Fast and Loud was a relic of a bygone era of TV. Rawlings, a true entrepreneur, realized that the cable TV model was dying and that the future was in controlling his own content on platforms like YouTube. He has pivoted masterfully, building a successful YouTube channel and still making millions. But the cost of that pivot was his reputation as a car guy. He is no longer seen as the down-to-earth garage owner, but as the shrewd businessman who will do whatever it takes to win. The reputation he cultivated for years as a lovable rogue was shattered by the reality of his actions. He may have won in business, but his legacy is forever tarnished by the trail of broken relationships he left behind.